Well, we're back with the Gunter Wulff Bingolett, and I imagine my automatic light in the kitchen is going to go out in a minute, so I'm going to move pretty quickly. This is the first time I'm going to plug this in. I have no idea what's going to happen. I had to bypass all this lot, but the plug is fused. So if we find the plug, which is presently on the floor, it is fused. Let's see what happens. Oh, we have bulbs. Let's have a look. We certainly do. Yeah, and they're the right ones to come on. Oh, this looks promising. Yes, welcome to Ralph's house. Well, that was a good start, wasn't it? Yeah, welcome back. And clearly it does work. Well, certainly the 12 volt does. There's no reason why the 30 volt shouldn't work. But I'm going to leave this until the daylight hours because it's getting on to midnight now. But the fact that the 12 volt circuit works because these bulbs are powered by 12 volt alternating current, not DC. Whereas the rest of the board is powered by about 30 volt DC. It could be that the 30 volt isn't working. The 30 volt rail on the transformer isn't working. I suspect it probably is. But as I'm going to switch these bulbs over to DC, what I shall need to do in the morning is look at the German circuit diagram for this and trace where the power rail for the 12 volt is. Well, I guess I could trace it all the way back to the transformer, and I'll map that out, and then I'm going to put in an LED driver. 12 volts, about 1 amp. It should cover all the LEDs in here because they're not all lit at once anyway, and if that's not enough, I've got a 5 amp one, but we'll have a look at that in the morning. I need to hit the sack, but what a brilliant result. I've just got the payout mechanism out, and the way this works is, let's explain it. There's normally a tube in there. Look, this one, it's obviously been hacked around in the past, probably for different coins. It's actually 25mm across there, so I'll either get a bit of brass tube or a bit of steel tube. It just fits in that nicely, and that'll hold a 20p great. But what a mess that is. So we'll definitely replace that. But otherwise, the way this thing works, so you've got a solenoid here, and when that's energized, very difficult to do it one-handed, but it'll pull this in, that end. Actually, I've just put a new spring on there. Yeah, so that'll be alright when that's all bolted in. And I'm always amazed at German engineering, apart from the fact that they use this horrible zinc type metal that's incredibly brittle. You don't want to bend any of this stuff, it'll just snap immediately. Which reminds me of a story I ought to tell you actually. I've got a friend of mine, anybody in the Volkswagen scene will know him if you're in the UK, and his name's Frank Grote, German lad. Well, I don't know if I think he was born, yes he was born in Germany. Spent most of his formative years as a baby sleeping on the back of a VW Type 2 camper van. In fact, he wouldn't sleep at night, and his mum and dad said that was the only way they could get him to sleep, was take the camper out, put the cot in the back, and he'd go to sleep. So it was the first noise that he ever heard. But I used to, you know, this is going back to the 80s, I guess, but I used to go down to Frank's yard at Walton. You know, I'd be working on bits and pieces. We just got on well. Nice guy, Frank. But his father, typical German, very short man with the hat, you know, with his paper under his arm waiting at the railway station. But I was out in Frank's yard one day, we were looking at VW bits, and his father came out and he held out his hand, and in it he'd got a mains plug all taken apart, and he just nodded, came up to me, showed me his hand, he said, "Look, good German screws." I think Frank may well remember that. I really ought to talk to Frank, being this is a German machine. You know, he might have better contacts than me. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I've been doing, let's just clear things a little bit out of the way so I can flip it around. There we go. Pull it right around. Yeah, but what I've been doing is I've been giving it a jolly good clean because, you know, I don't think this has been cleaned in many, many years. That's for sure. And just, and cleaning this track as well, trying to polish it. You don't want to go mad and use wet and dry on it or anything, because I imagine this is plated. But what I have used is a metal polish just to get the worst of it off. And there was a big black line that went round here, caused by the ball, of course. So as the ball comes through, that flips forward, stops the ball going back, obviously, and it bounces down. But the rubber on these is quite, you see that split in it? Yeah. Anywhere there's rubber on this thing, that will be the same, I should think, because that helps with the rebound. Yeah, there's a few bits like that. This is a little bit rusty as well, but I may be able to find some steel to replace that. The Bingolett and the Rialto are very similar. The Bingolett came first in 1959, and then there was the subsequent years, 60, 61, I think up to 63. There was the Rialto that followed it. The only difference really between the Bingolett and the Rialto was the Bingolett, the ball is sent round manually with a lever, and the Rialto still has a lever, but if you don't flick it within a certain amount of time, it will send the ball round anyway. That's really the difference. So whether it's a better machine or not is arguable. Anyway, German amusement arcade, and I say, to my knowledge at the moment, there is no video about these machines at all. Very little information, to be honest. And I'm no expert, so I don't think that at all. But what I am trying to do is get this up and running and show you my journey along the way. As I indicated in the first one, the way these work is, it works very much like an early Allwins ones, you know, where the ball runs around and drops in cups or into holes, that sort of stuff. But this is an electromechanical one, and I have heard them described as fruit machines. They are not fruit machines, absolutely not. They are basically an Allwin and bingo mixed. That's essentially what it's about. All of these columns, because there's no artwork on at the moment, denote a number, like a row of 4s, a row of 3s. And I think there's one that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. So you've got a few combinations of numbers you could get. And these slots down here, and the ball can drop into them. As you fire it over the top, it goes bing, 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 works its way through pretty randomly, it has to be said. I don't know if there's skill in this. I would debate that. But as you go along, you've got different columns representing different numbers. So if we plug it in, it's going to be a bit glary because I've fitted LED bulbs in at the moment because, frankly, I didn't have enough tungsten ones. And they're not cheap. But I got a batch of these, had them imported, just at least for testing purposes. So if we turn it on, and it's going to flare a little bit because they're LED bulbs. These two bulbs on the side light up the instructions and that sort of stuff. These that are unlit represent all the numbered columns. So if we take, I'm going to take one at random, we'll take that one. If I stick a spoon in there, and then you get a payout. That's basically it. So I've got all the bulbs in there. What I need to do is on the back is clean up all the relevant contacts because clearly they're not quite right, and I'll need to double check the wiring as well. But that is the principle of the Gunter Wulff Bingolett. So let's dive into it, because I found a couple of issues inside that I need to resolve. One looks like very fine work indeed. It's a very small broken wire which I need to get on top of. It is right on top of here, and it's not. Can you see that copper wire sitting up? and where it's broken on the right. Those two need to be joined up. Maybe that a mouse has got in there over the covering. The wiring underneath is actually fine. It's just this outer cover and it's just this thin wire that's broken. So I've got to fix that. All of these contacts need cleaning, but on the whole, this doesn't look like it's been in a damp place. Yeah, it may well have been prone to mice, but I haven't seen any mice droppings in it. Transformer works, we know that. It's delivering, as far as I know, 30 volt and 12 volt, and the selenium rectifier clearly still works. Very old connectors in here. A lot of this I'll replace. I've also got an LED 12 volt LED driver. It's 1 amp, which is a little bit more than I'd need, but it will fit in the bottom. So that's a possibility. I may fit that, or I may find a smaller 12 volt power transformer. Take the 12 volt that's supplying the bulbs off this transformer and run it on a separate one. That's the way I'm thinking of doing it. Sort of long term anyway. I mentioned in the very first episode of this Bingolett that the artwork itself is missing, the glass is missing. Well, that doesn't pose a massive problem, considering that, you know, I've got a Genko Archer pinball and I made a new back glass for that, and I thought that was going to be a major challenge. It was, in terms of laying the artwork out, but it's, you know, it's not the end of the world. And I did make a new one. So now Tim, the previous owner, he'd got a scan of a Bingolett glass, and someone very kindly redid the artwork for him, and because there were a picture of two waiters on the front, I'm not quite sure of the connection there, but he changed them into Laurel and Hardy, and they actually look quite good. But what I'm thinking is, because I do like to keep things original, is I'm going to bide my time on this, because sooner or later a Bingolett glass will come up, or I'll get a good scan of one. And if anybody's watching this who has a Bingolett and lives in the UK and is willing to let me, well, as long as you're not in Scotland, and is willing to take the front cover off for me, lay the glass down so I can scan it, I'd really appreciate it, because it will get this machine up and running again, and I'll get that reproduced on acrylic. But in the shorter term, what I could do is give the whole front to my son, who, you know, he's very design conscious, and let him come up with something of his own, and that's what we'll reproduce. And that will bide us time until a suitable glass comes along or I can get one scanned. That's what we're thinking of doing anyway. So if you wondered about the cosmetics, well, yeah, I've got a bit to do on the woodwork. But to be honest, well, we'll see how we get on. I can veneer if pushed. So, you know, that's a possibility. But as with all of these machines, you know, they've been around a while, and, you know, it's good to keep the patina on it. So I'm not going to do too much to it. And the actual front trim, once the front glass is in, is actually pretty spectacular. So, you know, cosmetics I always leave till the very, very last. And I have, certainly with one of my father's Allwins, which I inherited, made a brand new case for it. But what I did is I sourced oak from that period. Yeah, I didn't use modern oak, so I had to look around at old furniture made of oak, obviously, of the right thickness, and then literally put it through a circular saw and cut all the pieces to join them up. That'll be coming up in a future video, actually, when I put the case together. That'll be worth watching. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as the artwork's concerned. These springs are a little on the rusty side. I can get these though. I have done in the past for my pinball machine, so I shall replace those. And but I think what we'll do next is we'll start getting these rubbers off. Well, they're not rubber now, they're rock hard, and replace them with a modern material, so they'll last that little bit longer. And for the rest of this video, I think what we'll concentrate on is the cam drive that runs like runs behind these pins effectively, and it's powered by a motor. But as I mentioned, I've got a wire, very fine wire, that's clearly broken, nibbled by mice, I'm pretty sure. I can resolder that, that'll be okay. And then we'll concentrate on getting the cam running. I may have to take the motor out, strip it down, give it a good clean and a good grease before I even fire it up, because it hasn't been running a lot of years. Oh, just noticed more places for bulbs. Yeah, this will be quite good when it's all lit up, won't it? Oh, and one other thing I came across. Hooked across the power supply, and I'm not quite sure why, was this Mercury switch. Now, I can't think why it would need one, other than if someone bangs the machine or tries to tilt it in their favour. I don't know how it would work in their favour, tilting this. But it got this Mercury switch in it. But I thought, once this thing's bolted to the wall, it's not really going to move anywhere. So I don't really understand the significance of this. Plus there's some inherent safety aspects with Mercury, isn't there, as you know. If anybody's got any ideas why there was a Mercury switch, I can only think tilt switch. But if you can think of another reason, let me know. That's the 12 volt LED power supply. Was scrapped after a job, believe it or not. But the wires that are relevant, and these first two connectors in the chock blocks, grey and black. Grey is the positive, black is the negative. And they are. They're running on 12 volt DC now, which is a lot better, a lot less flicker. The only trouble is with these, you can get warm white ones, which would be more of a yellow glow, and that would be kind of ideal, wouldn't it? But they're not that common, and they seem to be about £4. The cheapest I've seen them is about £4 for two, and that's a lot when you've got to buy 30 of them. So in the short term, I shall stick with what I've got, and then I shall look at the bulbs again at a later time. Got plenty to be going on with, including replacing the rubbers on these, so I shall crack on with that. Anyway, that's enough for this week. It'll probably be a couple of weeks before I come back to this, because I'm also working on the Genko Archer, trying to juggle both and work, and I'm also doing a lot of writing at the moment. That's my strength in life, really, writing. Anyway, stay tuned to episode 3, and hopefully we'll have moved on in leaps and bounds, and I'll give you a recap of what I've done and any problems that I came across. How's that? Thanks for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.